what was my reach or whatever the word is. Yeah, I'm sounding like an old fart now as well. But yeah, it's I say they're trying to create something that doesn't need to be created. They need, excuse me, focus on the sport, live on the sport, and make the sport what it is, and embrace that. Not try to create something that doesn't need to be created.
All right. Point taken. So, we're off to the season ender coming up in
Yep,
Abu Dhabi.
yep.
What do you think?
With a
One
new
more
driver.
with a new driver? Yes.
Yep.
And refresh my memory.
Esteban Ocon, about 2 hours before the race in Qatar, was told, "Oh yeah, by the way, you're not going to race in Abu Dhabi. It's going to be Mick Doohan that races. Sorry, Jack Doohan. Mick was his dad, wasn't it? Christ. Uh, too many wheels for Mick. No, Jack Doohan will be driving the Alpine ahead of his debut with them next season. Um, it's quite ironic that at the start of the year they said, "Oh, there's going to be no rookies in Formula One for the first time ever," or whatever it was, and we've had three rookies make their debut this year. Um, Most in-season rookie debuts for however many years. So interesting, interesting dynamic there.
And we've
But
got four rookies for next year, I believe.
well, yeah, I mean, depending on what your minimum race count is to be considered
Yeah,
a
yeah,
rookie
yeah,
these
yeah.
days. Obviously, Ollie Berman's had two or three races now.
Couple of starts,
Um,
yeah.
Obviously the guys that are going to be
Duhan will
at
have at
Sauber.
least one.
Yeah,
Uh,
so Doohan will have one. Antonelli's not going to have. He's going to be fresh. The guys at Sauber, he's going to be fresh. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But yeah, it was all a little petty. I think that Ocon relationship has turned pretty sour with Alpine, and I do get the impression, and this goes back a long time, and I'll hold my hand up here. I've never been, Esteban Ocon's biggest fan. I've always thought he has a little way about him that's a little like toxic. Partly probably going back to the incident in Sao Paulo all those years ago, where he took Verstappen out when Verstappen was leading the race quite comfortably. It all got a little nasty. So I've never been a huge fan of his, and undoubtedly a massively talented driver. Goodness me. But
yeah,
yeah,
now
it wasn't.
Ocon's off to he's off to Williams next year. Is that
No, he's off
correct?
to Haas.
Oh, that's
So that was
correct.
that
That's
was so
right.
that was the
This is up to
bargaining
Haas.
chip,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah, so that was Alpine's bargaining chip. It's like, okay, you want to go race, or you want to go test for Haas at the postseason test in Abu Dhabi on the Tuesday. Um, the only way we'll let you do that is if you agree to not race in Abu Dhabi. And when it gets to that stage, you're like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah, he's
sit at
got nothing.
home.
He's got nothing to lose.
Exactly. He's gonna
You know
sit
what
at
I
home,
mean?
watch the race on TV, fly into Abu Dhabi on the Monday, and then go race with or go test with Haas on the um, Tuesday, whenever it's Tuesday, Wednesday, I think.
All right. So good stuff. Uh, boy, I had a thought and it just went right out of my head. Okay, when that happens, something to do
What's
is
the news? So Arthur Leclerc will be testing for Ferrari alongside his brother. For the first time, two brothers will compete in a Formula One session for the same team. Obviously, we've had brothers in the past in Formula One events for different teams, but I don't know if both cars will be on track at the same time. I don't know quite how the test setup is for Abu Dhabi, but I think you've got to have at least one young driver and then one experienced driver, or you can have one of your race drivers. So Charles Leclerc will be doing the testing for Ferrari because Mercedes haven't released Lewis yet. And Arthur Leclerc, one of the Ferrari test drivers, will be filling the other seat.
all right. Good enough. All right. So I guess that's all we got to talk about Formula One. I literally had a thought, and I was ready with it. Now it's gone. I hate that. When you're my age, it gets worse. So let's talk about IndyCar for a second, because there was a pretty decent announcement where the Dry Reinbold / Don Cusick team announced their Indy 500 drivers nice and early. So they're going to
Yep.
be running Ryan Hunter-Reay and Jack Harvey in their cars. Now, again, this is a team that my group, Elite IndyCar, sponsored last year, and we're going to be sponsoring them again this year. We're going to have our name on the mirrors again as soon as we raise the $20,000 and get that to them, which will not be a problem because our members are so wonderful with their contributions. But I'm like, Jack Harvey. I'm like, just can't get excited about Jack Harvey.
Could be worse. Could be Connor
Honestly.
Daly.
No, okay. So let's talk about Connor Daly for a second, okay? Connor Daly drove our car last year and led several laps and finished in the top 10. I mean, I was not excited about Connor Daly last year. By the time the Indy 500 ended, I'm a Connor Daly fan.
Whoa! How the
Obviously,
worm has turned. Wow.
I'm telling you,
Could become a politician with that sort of U-turn there, couldn't you? Damn.
I mean, part of the process was, me going to the sponsor event where Connor was there, and just him and
It's
I.
all about the perks, isn't it? How shallow can you be? Oh
I'm
my
not being
gosh.
shallow.
Oh, there you
I
go.
had a nice opportunity to sit and talk to this man. Um, you know, not as a fan, but as one of his sponsors, and really listen to what he had to say. And what he had to say, I'm like, I actually kind of like this guy. And then he performed wonderfully at the 500. And of course, a lot of our guys in our group were like, well, why didn't we sign Connor? Why didn't we sign Connor? I'm like, well, I'll tell you this. And this is what I know through my sources. Connor was offered the that ride, and he turned it down because he's got something on the radar for a full-time ride, which is likely going to be partnering Stingray Rob at UCOS Racing. That's all but signed at this time. If nothing goes wrong, that'll be announced either at the tail end of this week or early next week. They'll announce that
It's
Connor
Juncos Racing. Nothing ever goes wrong there, does it?
Yeah,
From a
sure.
PR and PR side, it's great.
Yeah, sure. Ask Canapino. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, but I can't get excited about Jack Harvey, but I still remember the high water mark for Jack Harvey for me anyway is bumping Graham Rahal out of the 500 a couple years ago,
Well,
because that was a ballsy flip and run that he did right after running with a hot engine, going right back out, and even though he wasn't doing anything close to pole speed, he was trying to be the slowest guy to get in, but he was fast enough to bump Rahal out.
you wait. This time next year, you have a few prawn canapes with this guy, and you'll be on his Christmas card list.
Who, Jack Harvey? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Let's see how he does at Indy. You have to admit, Daly had a really nice run at the 500.
Oh, he did. No, he did.
And he's had a couple of nice. I think the guy's got 4 top 10s in the 500.
Yeah.
Whether or not he does well over the full season, he's not shown that yet in his career. Because he's had a couple of full seasons here and there, and I think his highest spot in the championship has been 18th.
So here's a question for you. So I know it's I know this isn't why you do the sponsorship deal with your Elite IndyCar group, but when you run that sponsorship deal with them. Do you see a an increase in traffic to the Facebook group? Do you see an increase in members?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So it
I
works then.
I want to say we're sitting that close to, you know, 24, 25,000 members. I can't.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, and it's like people invite their friends all the time, and it's like
I mean,
and
you
we do.
invited me, so
Well, I mean, we give away free shit all the time,
Yep.
just for a drawing, and it's like, and it's not junk we're giving away.
Oh no, it's good. I mean, and
Some of these are $200-300 die casts we're giving away just to
yep,
guess who wins the poll for next weekend, right? And if you
yep,
get picked in a drawing, it's and people that get out of line in the group, if you want to come in and call other people, say, hey man, you're an asshole, you're a dick, you're out of the group. There's one thing we don't put up with is being disrespectful to other members. And
yep.
it's really we weed out that nonsense, weed out the robots, and it's just a great group. And we have get-togethers at every IndyCar race. Who's ever
Cool.
locally in the area, we have a nice get-together. Well, we'll find a spot. Everybody meet at the Firestone tent or wherever. Whenever we do Indy, we do it on Carb Day. It's always close to 100 people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What
So
happened, what happened to that guy that was trying to sue you for copying his Facebook group or something? I remember he used to be in there and disappeared.
he disappeared.
Good, good. The joys of social media. Oh boy.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so we're gonna raise the 20 grand again.
Cool.
And anybody that donates, whether you donate $5 or $5,000, you'll be eligible for the same drawings. And we've got team gear. We've got limited edition nice timepieces from the team, as well as tickets to the sponsor gathering, garage tours. During 500. So yeah, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
Still can't get excited about Jack Harvey, but let's see how he does. So
No, that's cool.
and I really honestly I hope Connor Daly nails down the Juncos ride, because
Yep.
I think when he was there at the tail end of the season last year, he gelled well with the team. He got some
Yep.
good results for the team, and I think he's like perhaps found a new home there, because here's a guy who's bounced around a lot.
Yep.
He told me something. He's like, he said, I've got a race uniform for every team.
Yeah. Just in
Somewhere in my
case.
closet. Yep.
And it goes to every race weekend with him probably.
Yeah. So let's talk about NHRA for a bit, because
Yeah.
big story on the Toyota front that
Yep.
and Toyota is your employer. So Toyota is no longer in NHRA after the upcoming 2025 season.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it's we've been part of NHRA for a good end of 20 years. We've won multiple championships in there. Countless countless races over that time, and you know I don't think it's a reflection of the series. I think it's just natural progression of what we're trying to do as Toyota and what we're trying to achieve. I mean, everything we do fundamentally from the racing side through the TRD brand is as promotion and advertising for our colleagues at TMNA, Toyota Manufacturing North America. It's and there's people who get paid far more than me who have probably looked at the numbers and realized that the amount of money that we put into NHRA each year could probably be allocated to different programs in a more sustainable way. And that's the decision they made, which is it is a shame. It's a great series. It's we have three or four full-time guys that support that program. We've been, in all fairness, even compared to the other manufacturers that are involved in it, we've probably put more resources into it than any of them. And that's been Toyota's way. We you look at what we do in NASCAR, in IMSA, through the Lexus brand, through in the NHRA. We've always gone in there full bore and committed to the program and put a lot of resource into it, probably more so than some others. And it's a natural progression, I think, unfortunately. And there's other programs that we're involved in now that we weren't involved with, when we started in NHRA. And certainly there's programs that we've started in the last 2 or 3 years that we weren't involved with. And, you could argue that gives those programs give more exposure to TRD and to Toyota than drag racing. So, it's a shame. Next, we're still going to be fully involved in 2025. We're not pulling out cold turkey, as it were. We've got another year in the series, and championships to win, races to win. And I know the guys that work for us that support the program, they'll be going into next year, fully committed. It's as I said, NHRA, it's a difficult program at times. We've seen a lot of changes in the last year or two with tracks closing and a change in the dynamic of the sport. And as I say, that probably doesn't fit into the portfolio of what Toyota are trying to do. Yeah, it's a shame. But as I say, we're going to move into other programs and grow some of the existing programs we have and support the Toyota brand in whatever way we can. It's a shame Lee's not on the show tonight. Obviously, I'm sure he has his views and his opinions. We'd like to think we'd leave the series in a better place than when we joined it. And we certainly wish them all luck moving forward and see where it all falls out after we leave in the end of 2025.
All right, so this means that Toyota's major number one is still NASCAR, right?
Mm-hmm. Very much so, yeah.
We've got the IMSA program going on.
Yep.
Are they looking anywhere else? You've got a couple of other minor series with the like the what's the spec series you were working with?
So yeah, so we have our main 75% of our resources go on our cup program. That's our gold standard, if you like. That's our main goal at the start of every year, is to win a cup championship. We then have the Lexus program with in the IMSA series, and also we support now the Lexus program in the WEC series, not directly. That's run by teams in Europe, but we do provide support to them. And then we have just coming to the end of its second season, GR86 program, which is a single make series. Which I say we've just come to the end of our second year. We had at the Indianapolis race this year, we had Keanu Reeves in one of our cars, and we also had one of these social media influencers in one of our cars as well. But it's quite cool that at our facility down in Mooresville, North Carolina, we have Keanu Reeves' car signed in our lobby, which is always pretty neat. But it's all about growing the brand on that program.
And Keanu Reeves, big race fan.
Oh yeah, I mean he's done lots of things before. And you know what?
Didn't he host the Braun F1?
Yeah, he did the Braun F1 Netflix show. He's raced in the past at Long Beach, I think, in some of the celebrity races. But he didn't just jump in a car and go and do a few laps and everything. He was for weeks and months out from when he had announced that he was doing this race, was training and getting driver coaching, I think from Townsend Bell, and really put an effort into this. He's one of these guys. I think anybody that pays any attention to his career, he's not one of these like guys that doesn't take anything he does seriously. He's fully committed, and he trained like he would a movie. Really involved, really in depth, and put a lot of effort into it. So we have the GRE6 program, and I believe it's starting next year. We'll also be competing in the TC category of the SRO series with a GR Corolla, which we will sell to teams to run, and we will support them. But that'll be a little bit of a different model from what we've done in the GR86. This will be actually competing against, I mean, it's basically Civics and Honda Civics and BMW M3s are the main of the cars in that series. So we'll add some presence to there, and for the GR brand, which is Toyota's global racing brand, the Gazoo racing brand. It's really starting to grow that in North America, and we're pretty excited about where that's going to lead in the next few years.
All right, good stuff. And interesting you bring up Townsend Bell because that guy still owes me $200, but that's a story for another day. So one Formula One note we forgot to mention is that Dutch Grand Prix Zandvoort they got a small renewal,
1 year extension, yeah.
But after 2026 they lose their date. So
yep.
Yeah. And they were off the calendar for a while, and then they
were
came
off
back on
85, I think was their previous last race before 2021, I think it was. And it's it's one of those races I think it's always going to be pretty difficult to sustain. Obviously the Max effect, for whatever you want to call it, has had a huge impact on motorsport in Holland, and that whole region. But it's it was never, how should we put it? What's the phrase? It's not a big boys Formula One track. It's a pretty neat track for sure, but you look at it and like, is this sustainable for modern F1 machinery? And the answer is no.
Is it like NASCAR going back to Wilkesboro?
Yeah, almost.
Kind of, right? For lack of a better comparison.
Yeah, it's just not as developed as some of the modern tracks, and yeah, it has it has a bit of charisma and a bit of character for sure, but you can argue, will that still be the case when Max steps away or he's not as prominent as he has been? Probably not. It's not going to have that exposure, and you see the German Grand Prix with the Senna. I mean, goodness me, 20 years ago, Hockenheim was sold out every weekend with Schumacher there. Could you have envisaged a time when you said, yeah, there wouldn't be a German Grand Prix past 2018 or whenever it was? No, you couldn't. So, unfortunately, some of these events are a little fickle, for want of a better word, and they are, at the behest and the scrutiny of the fans. And, some of these countries that who don't have motorsport as a core to their economy, or use motorsport as a marketing tool, will struggle to maintain and host Grand Prix because it's a very, very expensive platform. The Formula One or the FOM demand a pretty high fee to host a race every year. And
so let me just throw this out here, because I'm actually thinking this whole thing through about the centric with the drivers. Brazil's been on the calendar forever. There was a time when there were so many good Brazilian drivers in both Formula One and IndyCar, right?
Yeah.
Now it seems like the great Brazilian drivers are fewer and far and farther between.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see Brazil drying up on the calendar one day, or is that still a very viable market?
I may be wrong here, but I believe that Brazil is one of the grandfathered races that has a reduced hosting fee compared to some of the newer tracks. They don't pay the same amount that Abu Dhabi or Las Vegas or Miami or Qatar, Singapore, Saudi Arabia will pay. I believe they
You're
pay a
probably
reduced rate.
right. Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah. So
So I think that goes a long way. And again, I know there's been this discussion about, South Africa, can you consider it a world championship if you don't race in, all the continents of the world? Not being in South America would be a huge blow because you look at the history of the sport there, and you know the thing that amazes me is we haven't had a Brazilian driver in Formula One for quite a while now. But you look at the stands there every year; they're packed. The fans are just as passionate. Obviously, a lot of that revolves around Ayrton Senna, and we'll probably touch on that a little bit later with his Netflix series. But the history of what he did. Sorry, my phone think that I said Siri when in fact I said Senna. Okay. Um, and um, yeah, that's where they get it from, and I think if we would ever lose that, it'd be a real shame.
oh, I agree. It would be a shame. Yeah, but I'm just like, the way you're looking at it, the newer tracks and even Mexico City, right? Is that
Yeah.
could that be in danger?
Well,
When
once
was
Checo goes, who knows? Yeah.
when was the last really good Mexican Formula One driver, right?
Well, 2 years ago, Checo was pretty good.
All right. So speaking of Brazilian Formula One driver, let's get right
Yep.
into the Netflix series Senna that
Yep.
we've been promoting here on the show. I
Yep.
had a chance to I watched all 6 episodes. Richard, you watched a couple
I
of
got the
the
first two. Yep.
for first two. Okay, so number one is pretty well shot. The visuals are decent, but I was really disappointed in the fact that after all the because we saw the video where they had recreated the cars and whatnot,
Hmm.
they actually didn't recreate a lot of the racing sequences,
No.
and they did a lot of it with the with their kit cars that they made for the
Hmm.
show, close, tight camera shots. And it's all the typical Hollywood camera shots, right? The
Yeah.
close up on the driver's eyes, right? The two
Yeah.
cars side by side, the close up on the front suspension, and then of course the second biggest Hollywood trope of all, the hand on the stick shift.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, you know what the number one Hollywood trope of all is? Every time somebody walks into a room with a bag of groceries, there's a big loaf of French bread sticking out of the bag.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yep, yep. So, but I'm like, so, but
Yeah.
then they blended that with 30-year-old TV footage of
Yep.
the actual racing action. Now obviously, with today's HD cameras and whatnot, that doesn't actually blend well. So they very creatively, every time they went to the racing action, it would switch to like a team manager watching it on a monitor or a family watching it in their
Yep.
or watching it in their room. So and it blended kind of nicely, but I was thinking, they didn't really recreate the racing action.
No.
And
Well, there was.
and
Yeah.
it was kind of funny because like one of the reviews I read said all the racing footage was thrilling. I'm like,
Yeah. Who wrote that review?
some online auto racing blog. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
It
that's
wasn't.
just like it wasn't really thrilling. Um, well, because the actual racing was thrilling, you know, and they're showing 30-year-old, you know,
Yeah.
but at the same time,
That's yeah.
I thought they blended it together nicely. But
Yeah.
again, to please a race fan with a racing movie, my God,
It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
because I compare it to Rush, where they recreated almost all of the racing stuff with actual period cars.
Hmm.
Um, I think the only thing well, even in Rush, they recreated Nicky's accident.
Yeah. No, they did an amazing. Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
that's
they did blend it with a little of the original TV coverage, but
yeah.
all right. So
Yeah.
that
So
little annoying thing aside, what did you think of the couple episodes you watched?
So the first two episodes I've watched, according to the producers, there's only one circuit that hosts, Formula Three in the UK and Formula Ford. Same circuit. The first two episodes when he's coming through the Formula Ford and Formula Three categories, which looks like nowhere in the UK. I've never seen that track. Don't know where that one is. Um, the He lives in Norfolk, which is anybody that knows the UK, Norfolk is like the Midwest. It's as flat as they come. But yet he's walking up and down hills all the time, which is now it's not where he grew up or where he moved to when he moved to the UK. But again, does that really detract from the show? No, probably not. But yeah, the bit
No, because
where like
I didn't pick up on that because I've
no,
never
for
been to
sure, I get
Norfolk.
it. I
Yeah,
get
so.
that, yeah. But the way that it's set up, where the first episode and a half of racing action all takes place at the same made up circuit is a bit weird. I don't get why they do that. But I will
I
say what,
I noticed the same thing in Rush because
yeah,
like the actual Formula One stuff is fairly accurate, but the Junior Series stuff it's kind of made up. Like the Crystal Palace race in Rush
yeah,
between that actually never happened,
yeah. I mean, that
or
was,
didn't happen
yeah,
that way if it did.
yeah.
So
I mean, the bit in the second episode where he pulls the tape off his car to beat Martin Brundle. He did that. That really happened, but I don't think it was the final race. I don't think it was the championship race that happened in, but it certainly did happen in a race. Um, but the one thing that really impressed me, and okay, not having not seen the final four, so don't give away what happens at the end. Um, but he
Richard is the same as the Bible. Main character dies.
okay, shit, there you go. Um, uh, but the
Keith
one
is
thing
over
that
here shaking his head.
yeah, the one thing that really stood out to me was the first scene. The first scene in the whole thing was obviously set in Imola in '94, the day before the 30th of April when Roland
Yes,
Ratzenberger had his
yes.
accident.
Hmm.
And you see, and Senna was very, very upset by that. Emotionally, he was, it yeah, it affected him very, very badly. You
And
read
then
the stories.
and that's fairly well documented
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
watch the Senna documentary
yeah.
that was
Yeah.
done a
Oh,
couple
yeah. I
years
mean,
ago. Yeah. So
if you look at the relationship, that if you read any of Sid Watkins' books, which I mentioned on the show before, are fantastic reads.
hmm
Sid Watkins was very, very close with Senna, and he said, "Hey, let's just go fishing. We don't need to do this anymore." But Senna was out there on the track, and the thing in the show that really stood out to me, and I don't know how they handle this later in the show, but they show him kneeling down or crouching down on the side of the track, and he
hmm
placed his hand on the asphalt there, and you can see on the back of his hand there's abrasions on the back of his hand,
Yep. Hmm.
and that was very real. That attention to detail was pretty impressive because as a lot of people are aware, one of the big issues that Senna had with the Williams car in the early part of the 1994 season was the steering wheel was in a different position from what he'd been used to at McLaren, and he found that the back of his hand and his knuckles were rubbing on the monocoque, and that impacted his driving style, and was potentially the source of some of the issues that he had in the first few races of 1994, and which also led, unfortunately, to Williams modifying the steering column position, which potentially could have had some impact or bearing on the accident. And we will never know whether the steering column failure caused the accident or whether it was the steering column failed as a result of the accident. But it, you know, I nobody knows. Nobody knows.
All right,
Um,
so Richard, I will tell you that absolutely the topic of the back of his hands hitting the monocoque is explored in the
good,
later episodes and
good.
explained, and the whole scene with him and Sid Watkins talking, where he says, "Hey, we could just quit and go fishing."
Yeah,
Also in there, and also very
good.
well done. Um, but otherwise, a lot of the stuff is accurate, but I'm just, I'm kind of annoyed with some of the stuff they skipped.
Yeah,
Like they skipped his second 2 years of Lotus,
yeah.
rather than
They
they go
skipped
right
yeah,
from the first year of Lotus to McLaren, and then they go right from 1991 to 1994. They skip
yeah,
92 and 93, which honestly, this is where McLaren was trailing Williams.
yeah.
Williams had a better car, but Senna managed to win his share of
Hmm.
races, which, and if you ask me, that's almost more impressive
Yeah,
than him winning, multiple races with the best car than, here's a guy with a car that's not the best, outperforming the limits of the car. But they just skip right from 91 to 94. 92, 93 don't exist. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. It's a shame
I
a
was
little bit. Yeah,
actually, I was, I was a couple episodes in. I'm like, well, let me see who plays Michael Andretti. I'm like, oh,
yeah. No,
not even in there. We just skipped that.
that was you mentioned that was interesting. Some of the actors they had portraying some of the of the characters that we know because we follow the sport are interesting. Some of the ways they portray them is a little um, off.
I thought that the guy that played Ron Dennis was spot on.
Did you? See, I didn't. I thought that was a little quirky.
Okay, I
Ron was
thought
a
it
little
was
different. Did
pretty
they cover
close.
the contract negotiation with
Uh,
McLaren with Ron Dennis and the
some,
old towing costs
uh, perhaps.
when Senna didn't know how to what the concept of like tossing a coin to make a decision?
If they did, I missed it.
Okay, so the story this is a fantastic story. So the story
See,
goes,
I'd be lying if I didn't say I might have took a nap or two watching
okay, understood,
6 hours worth of it. Yeah, but
understood.
but
So the
I don't
story
remember
goes,
that. I remember Dennis talking to him about the contract.
yeah. So the story goes that they were in the middle of a contract negotiation, and basically there was like $1 million on the table or whatever the number was, and it was Senna wanted it up front, and Ron Dennis wanted to pay it in like monthly installments or whatever it was. But it was one of these minor petty things that it's silly, but they both had different opinions on it. And so Ron Dennis said, right, okay, we're going to toss a coin for it, toss a coin. And so like, well, how does that work? What's the concept of that? I said, well, you call heads, I call whatever, and then whoever wins, if I win, you get it monthly, and if you win, you get it in one lump sum. So I said, all right, well let's try. Let's practice, and then I'll see if I think it's fair, and then we'll do it. So he tosses the coin. Yeah, all right, yeah, we good. Okay, cool. So come to do the real coin toss for the real negotiation. Ron Dennis flicks the coin up in the air. It lands and hits the edge of his desk, flies across his office, and ends up upright against the wall on the corner of the carpet.
Okay,
So it's like,
if
and
I
then
missed
Ron
that,
Dennis,
if I missed, I got to go back and watch. Episode 5 is the one where I
Okay.
dozed off a little. So I'm
Yeah.
going to double check that. So,
So apparently
um,
Ron Dennis turned around and said, "Fine, just have your $1 million," and walked out.
so the other thing I found a bit because they had this character in there, a reporter named Laura Harrison,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
who is absolutely a fictional character who never existed,
Yep.
and
Yep.
she's woven throughout the whole story. You
Yep.
know, she's followed him in Formula Ford, and then
Yep.
she's still following him in Formula One, and
Yep.
then she writes this article about him after he's deceased. But she never existed, right?
No.
But
No.
as I'm watching this, I'm thinking they're gonna have these two hook up,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
that never happens.
No.
Now,
No.
my G Senna hooks up with a lot of other very pretty women, um,
Yeah.
and this Laura Harrison, she's quite a looker herself.
Mhm.
So, but I'm like, I don't know what the point was of having the other than just to provide continuity to the story.
Well,
Uh,
the
but usually the filmmakers do that with a compilation character, but she's not a compilation of anybody.
no.
She's just
So
entirely
I think
fictional. So,
I think what they've done, and I think maybe where this comes from is in the episodes I've seen, Keith Sutton's a pretty integral character in the show, which is what he was. Genuinely in
oh
real
sure,
life,
yeah,
Keith and Senna were very, very close. And maybe they realized that Keith Sutton isn't sexy enough for that role. And they wanted to create somebody else that had that same personal relationship with him, but was a female, and keep that dynamic going. But yeah, I don't know. I must admit, when I first watching the first couple, I'm thinking, I don't remember in any of the books I've read on Senna, especially in his early life, and he's coming through Formula Three and Formula Ford, this omnipresent journalist. There was certainly, Keith Sutton, they were very close. There was another photographer that was very, very close to her, and yeah, it's strange one as you say, but it. This is
like
the
I say,
problem with all
it
of
helps.
these shows, isn't
It
it?
helps. It helps bind the story together. And
But who
again,
is this
it's
show
just
aimed at? That's the next question. Who is this show aimed at? Is this this?
people that didn't watch Senna when he was alive.
Yeah,
You know what I
it's
mean?
the Drive to Survive crowd, as we talked about earlier. It's the people that would be more interested in the story than that would be actually interested in the truth. I hate to say it.
Well, I mean
You
that's
know,
like you can apply that to 100 different Hollywood biopics.
yeah. And we
You
sit
know,
there and,
across a bunch of topics, right?
of course you
I
could,
mean,
of course you could.
what was Oppenheimer really accurate? You know
Yeah,
what
it's
I mean?
like any war movie, isn't it? It's like any war movie.
Yeah,
You take people that are actually in the trenches and in those situations, and they'd probably pick holes in these things all day long. And
sure, yeah.
it's unfortunate, for want of a better word, that we are fans of the sport, and we'd far rather probably see something that's factually accurate that but has less special effects or less glitz
Oh
and less
yeah,
glamour.
yeah.
We would far rather watch that, but we know that's not what's going to sell.
Right, yeah. It was just like the Dale Earnhardt movie, the one that's called Three,
Yeah,
the Barry Pepper movie. Yeah, there were a lot of mistakes in there and a lot of really made up shit, but when you weave it together, it makes a pretty good
yeah,
television story. Yeah, so or got Heart Like a Wheel, Shirley
yeah.
Muldowney story. Yep, that was a lot of that was made up.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Grease Lightning, Wendell Scott story.
I
That
thought you were talking
movie.
about the John Travolta movie. Then sorry. And in fact, that
Oh,
wasn't real. That wasn't real anyway.
uh,
So
all right.
I
So
hate to break it to
that's
you as well. Star Wars. That's way out there.
really
Yeah. Sorry.
okay. So anyway, that takes us to the end of our hour. So I want to
thank goodness.
I want to thank you, Richard, for having fun with me. I want to thank you, Keith, for putting up with us being a day late, and hope you enjoy the movies tonight with your nephew. So I want to thank Uber Australia and Louise Torres, Multimedia. Louise, one of these days, come back and see us.
Yep.
I mean, like, I feel like redheaded stepchild you left behind. Thank you to the Senna
I think
film.
he had one of those in his photo shoot recently, actually.
Say what now?
I think Louise had one of those in his photo shoot recently.
He probably did, yep. But I want to thank Facebook Live, YouTube and Spotify, and Sinister One Productions on our fine producer, Keith Hayes. But most of all, I want to thank you folks that put up and listened to Richard's mouth all night. So until next week, and next week our last show of the season?
Probably will be far off, yeah.
Yeah, so we might do one more. Might do one more wrap-up show right before Christmas. So, but next week we'll come and talk to you about Abu Dhabi. But until then, folks, good night. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching Drafting the Circuits. Make sure to follow Drafting the Circuits on Facebook, Spotify, Twitter, and YouTube. Drafting the Circuits is a Sinister One production.